My mother's name was Catherine Gage. My father's mother's name was Lucy Powell. My family name is Evans. My name is Gage Powell Evans. I am my family. When my mother died 20 years ago, my brothers and I decided to return to the house after the funeral to take back some mementos from our family so that we could have them with us in our own homes as reminders. I knew I wanted to take some of my mother's sweaters because she had awesome taste and I loved her sweaters and they all fit. When I went to my mom's closet, I could just feel her alive around me. I went through each hanger, pushing it aside, deciding which ones to pick. I found a big old trunk in the corner of her closet. I opened it to look inside to see what it was. It looked like old books and clothes. I decided I'd take it back to Colorado to go through it in more detail. When I got it back and started going through it, the first thing I saw was my grandmother Catherine Gage's scrapbook that she kept from 1907 to 1912. It's a big black book with pictures, and it was old with crumbling pages, the brittle edges. I had to be really careful when I was turning the pages so that I didn't break them off too much on the edges. I never knew too much about my grandmother, Catherine Gage, because she died when my mother was 4 years old. 6 years later, my grandfather remarried, and his new wife, Priscilla, didn't want to know anything about the first wife. So all of Catherine Gage's stuff was packed into boxes and put away into closets. And so Catherine was never really mentioned the whole time my mother was growing up. But as I took out this book and I turned the pages, my grandmother Catherine stood before me like a hologram. And I was getting to know her. She was quite a party girl. She had invitations every weekend, and she had dance cards from those parties. And I was delighted to find my grandfather's name listed again and again and again on every dance card, month after month, year after year. And I saw their relationship grow from friendship to love. It was beautiful. So I continued to go through the trunk. I found another huge book, big red book, leather bound, called The Powells of Virginia. On the first page, I heard my father's voice in my head. There was a picture of Levin Powell, and my father always said, the granddaddy of us all. And I looked at the portrait of Levin Powell, and below the portrait, I saw a picture of a cabin. And the caption said, one of the old slave cabins standing about 50 yards from the house site. Once I caught my breath after reading this unvarnished hard reality about my ancestry, I started turning pages again. The next portraits that I see are of Burr Powell and his wife, Catherine. Their house is still standing. There is a picture of the exterior of the house called the Hill. Next to that picture is an interior of a room, very cozy. There's a fire in the hearth. There's a spinning wheel. There's a butter churn. And the caption under that picture reads, "One of the old slave quarters." Shame begins to cast a pall over my family pride. Don't get me wrong, I understand my family lineage goes back to the 1700s in Virginia and South Carolina. I figured intellectually at some point that I was going to see enslavers in my ancestry. But for me, there's a difference between knowing it in my brain and seeing it detailed on my family history book, my family history. I take a deep breath, try to find some inner peace, and I go back to looking through the trunk. Tucked away at the bottom, I see a yellowed envelope that's not like any of the other things in the trunk, so my curiosity is piqued again. I open the envelope and pull out a thin diamond-shaped piece of copper. Embossed on the metal, it says, "Charleston, number 826, servant, 1817. There's an old paper tag written in fountain pen attached to the metal. I can't read all of the words because the tag is crumbling in the way Catherine's was. It's that old paper. Some of what I can make out is very old slave tag. This piece of metal would have been worn around the neck of an enslaved person who was rented out to people who did not own slaves for special occasions or for particular skilled work. The owner, my ancestor, would have registered the rental because it was taxable income with the city of Charleston, duly registered as number 826. A quick Google search reveals that these tags indeed are rare and valuable. Some collectors have priced them as high as $10,000. No, not for me. My family has profited enough already through the generations from the brutal practice of slavery. The pictures of the slave quarters in the Powell genealogy took my breath away. But this tag, it was like a punch in the gut. As I held this little piece of copper in my hand, it started to grow hot. I kept holding it, feeling the burn in my hand and the weight on my heart. I put it back in the envelope, put it back in the trunk because I didn't know what to do with it. The real value of the old trunk is every name on Catherine's dance cards in her scrapbook. The value of every name in the Powell genealogy, which is a privilege, even if I have to sit with the knowledge of my family's contribution to the legacy of slavery. I am connected to all of those people. I am also connected to the person known as 826. Number 826 was a person, just like Levin Powell was a person. Number 826 is part of my ancestral past, just as Burr Powell was. I have taken the tag out of the trunk. It is my reminder to connect with my Black cousins, the descendants of number 826. This story is just beginning.